Washington beats the Raiders on Sundays if. My keys to the game. I watched basically the entire Chargers-Raiders game from Monday night. Watched it, the broadcast, watched a lot of the All-22 because when we get these AFC teams that we don't see, and it's early in the season, we haven't seen a lot of the Giants, Eagles, and Cowboys either. But it's, a lot of new stuff. The Raiders hired Pete Carroll in the offseason, hired Chip Kelly to be the offensive coordinator, went out and got Geno Smith. That's an organization that thought about this season as a season in which, hey, we can contend. We can play for something. We can have a winning season. They're in a tough division for that. With the Chargers, obviously, the Chiefs and the Broncos, there were high expectations for Denver this year. But Pete Carroll, as an older coach, maybe that was part of it. If you were going to go for a rebuild, you maybe hire somebody younger. They brought Pete Carroll in, and they're all in a little bit on not the Super Bowl, not a division title, but on having a winning season and contending for a playoff spot. They're off to a 1-1 start. They beat the Patriots in the opener 20-13. That was on the road. And then the home game on Monday night, they lost to the Chargers 20-9. A big part of that loss was Geno Smith throwing 3 picks in the game. He's thrown 4 in the first 2 games. He leads the league with 4 interceptions in 2 games. All right. I'll just say one thing about the Raiders in general. I think that this has a chance offensively, even with Mariota at quarterback, to be a big day through the air. They don't cover well. They seem disorganized defensively. And Graham's been a good defensive coordinator. Now, their pass rush with Max Crosby can be a problem. So my number one key, Washington beats the Raiders if they protect the quarterback. I think that quarterback will be Marcus Mariota on Sunday. You have to account for Max Crosby, but I think if they can protect the quarterback, which they could not do against Green Bay, and by the way, part of that protecting the quarterback means to run the football a little bit. But I think there's some big chunk opportunities, both, through the air yard route and also with yards after catch against this Raiders secondary. Will Washington protect with a different offensive line Sunday? I'm not discounting the potential, not probability, but the potential that Josh Connerly Jr. could take a seat for Andrew Wiley, or maybe Allegretti takes a seat for Wiley. So at least they've got a player that because Allegretti hasn't played well either. I think, as I mentioned yesterday, there's a chance they could go with 6 offensive linemen, not because they've got an issue with protecting, but because John Bates isn't going to play more likely than not. And that 6th offensive lineman could be a guy like Trent Scott. I saw Pete Haley, who's now up in Connecticut. Pete, of course, used to be in town. I saw him tweet out, I'd love the odds on a Trent Scott touchdown catch. Remember, he had that touchdown against the Bengals. So don't be surprised if you get a 6th O-lineman who's essentially replacing John Bates, and they can go 12 personnel with that, and they can throw out of that, and that can be part protection as well. Trent Scott would be, if he lined up, would be ineligible. Eligible, not ineligible. Did I say ineligible? He would be ineligible. But I could definitely see on Sunday, after watching the Raiders defensively, if they can handle Max Crosby, not easy. You cannot let Josh Connerly Jr. go solo on Max Crosby. That would be negligence at the highest level after what we saw last week. Max Crosby may have the highest motor of any player in the league. Quinn said that the other day. It's so true. Every single time you watch Max Crosby, it is just a motor like it never stops. The energy level he plays with, you have to account for Max Crosby because he can wreck a game. And this is one of those games which, even with Mariota, I think they can win the game, but not if they take big sacks that end drives, not if they turn the ball over because of pressure. I would imagine that Max Crosby is going to be handled by more than Josh Connerly Jr. or by a replacement for Josh Connerly Jr. But I think if they can protect their passer, again, I think it will be Mariota. We'll see. Things may have changed here, and we'll find out, I think, within the hour. I think they can throw the football. I think this could be a big day for Ertz. I think it could be a big day for Deebo Samuel. I think it could be a big day for Terry in this game. It'll be interesting if Noah Brown doesn't go. Is it Chris Moore? Is it McCaffrey? I think it'll be Moore. He's played on the outside. They're going to miss Noah Brown. You know, the players that they lost, Bates, Brown, Wise, and Eckler, that's each one stings because there aren't obvious replacements for any of them. Number one key to beating Vegas on Sunday is to protect the quarterback, because I do think that their best way to move the football, and I'm not advocating, calling 50 pass plays to just 12 running back runs. I want them to be able to run the ball. That's part of the protection of their quarterback, is to run the football and be able to maybe play action off of running the football. But the protection of the quarterback on Sunday is crucial, because if the quarterback, whether it is 1st and 10 play action or 3rd and 9 drop back, if you can protect the quarterback, I think this will be a different game for the receivers and the tight ends, and maybe the backs as well, in terms of their ability to be open, much more so than they were against Green Bay. Number 2, have to take advantage of what should be an absolute advantage Washington has defensively up front against the Raiders' offensive line. The Raiders do not have a good offensive line. Plus, one of their players, their starting right guard, Powers Johnson is his name. He could be out, and it's not a good O-line to begin with. To me, after watching what I watched in the opener against the Giants, I know it was the opener, but Kinlaw and Payne, Armstrong, this is a better defensive front than the one we had last year. Now, it did a decent job against the run, although Jacobs did get yards when he needed to get yards. I think the talk, and I don't know, I had Steve Suter do the film breakdown. Steve talked about it was a pretty good job against the run. I still think Jacobs, when they needed him to get yards, got yards, but it wasn't a terrible night. It was an average to slightly higher average night against the run. They got torched through the air in that game. But if the mismatch against the Raiders offensive line is what I think it is, and Washington comes out with the kind of energy level and the kind of dominance they had against the Giants offensive line, I think that that's a huge advantage for Washington. I think this could be a defensive-led win. I think the Raiders could have a difficult time running the football. Did you know, I saw this stat, that Ashton Genty is averaging 0.2 yards before he gets contacted? That means there is immediate penetration, and he is getting hit in the backfield. He has actually done a phenomenal job of making people miss or breaking tackles just to get back to the line of scrimmage at times. Raiders' offensive line is not good. And I'll tell you what, when you, in the Chip Kelly offense, you need some time for your quarterback. And Geno can rip it. Make no mistake, Geno can rip it. He can make every throw. He's also a risk taker. I've always liked Geno Smith. And they have speed defensively. The 4th round pick, Thornton, number 10, watching him and then going back, he's a 4.3, 4.4 guy. They got Jacoby Myers, who's definitely more of a possession underneath guy. They've got some speed. So D-line, this is their game Sunday against the Raiders O-line. Stop the run, but then get after Geno and don't give him time, because if he has time, they've got burners. They've got big play ability. So I look at this game and I'm like, if we can protect the quarterback, whether it's in non-passing situations, play action, or it's in drop-back situations, obvious passing downs, there are going to be people open. And if it's Jayden, I'd feel super comfortable. But I feel good about Mariota hitting wide open Ertz, hitting, Terry with separation this week. I see separation. I see players open against the Raiders secondary, different than the Packers secondary. And then flip side, if the D line can, dominate what should be a banged up and not very good O line, then the Raiders are going to have a difficult time. This is a game in which Washington can win in the trenches. And I didn't think that they did that last Thursday night. They certainly did not do that on offense against the Packers. What else did I have here? Yeah, I mean, in addition to, owning that line of scrimmage, you've got to tackle Genty. Genty hasn't gotten off yet, but he's totally capable of it. And he is a guy that can make people miss and can break tackles. He can get 3 when there's nothing. He can get back to the line of scrimmage when there's -2. He can get 10 when there's 4. So you've got to tackle well in this game against Ashton Genty. Yeah, I mean, I like the advantage Washington has up front on defense. I think that is a key to the game to take advantage of that. Because if not, I could see the Raiders getting some big plays. You give Geno time, they've got guys that can get open and can get open deep. Back to Washington's offense. You really have to be more balanced, especially if it's Mariota. But even if it were Jayden Sunday, let's be balanced. Let's get Krosky Merritt into the game. I think the running back situation plays out this way. And I'll ask Ben about this in an hour. I think it's Krosky Merritt to start. I think he's in the huddle on 1st and 10. I think that Chris Rodriguez gets short yardage opportunities, but I think he'll also get a series or two, depending on the context of the game and how many series they have. I think he'll get a 1st and 10, a 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5 opportunity in a series in for Krosky Merritt. But I think Krosky Merritt, Bill, will be the starter. And then I expect to see Jeremy McNichols. I know how much they like him. I know how confident they are in him as a pass protector, he's the Eckler third down, back. He's not the early down Eckler replacement. But he is against he's not the early down replacement, but he is the third down replacement. Look, you cannot protect the quarterback consistently if you're going to call 50 pass plays and just hand the ball off 12 times. Quinn pointed that out. Washington's got to be more balanced. I am interested to see what they do, up front. Can they go 12 personnel, keep Raiders in their, base, which is a 4-3, and can they throw, off that and get people open? I think they will be able to do that. What else did I have here? Turnovers are going to be key in this game. This is the way you lose Sunday, is you end up with 2 picks. You end up with a high throw to a wide open guy, over the middle, Ertz, and it gets picked off by Jeremy Chin, maybe. Yes, he plays for the Raiders. You cough one up, on a backside hit by Crosby. They haven't turned it over in 2 games. They also haven't gotten takeaways. If you get 2 takeaways, if you're +2, I think this is a double-digit win. If you're even, I think it's a close game. If you're -2, I think it's problematic. I think they could lose the game. You could say that about almost every NFL game, but the Raiders are going to need, coming in tired maybe, they're going to need a couple of plays. You can't give it to them. Yeah. They've got a good punter, and Carlson's a very good kicker. So if it comes down to that, they've got, 2 good kickers. We've got good kick coverage. And I thought Jalen Lane looked good on punt returns last week. I did. What else do I have here? Yeah. To me, it is protect the quarterback, and you can have a big day, I think, throwing the football against their secondary. Be disruptive up front on defense because I think you can stop the run and I think you can get after Geno Smith. And I think if you don't get after Geno Smith, they've got guys that can make plays. They've got team speed at wide receiver. Oh, and they've got Brock Bowers. Okay, they've got arguably the best tight end in football. All right, 112 catches as a rookie last year. He's not 100%, but he played on Monday night. But if you give him time between their receivers and Brock Bowers, Geno can pick you apart. He's capable of that. But with pressure, he'll put him up for grabs, and you got to make him pay. And then I do think that turnover margin in this game, I mean, you can say that about almost any game, but I think in this game, you cannot give the Raiders life by giving them short fields in this game. I see a Washington win with either quarterback, but I think it'll be much closer with Mariota.